one thing we've learned is no shortcuts, right? When a founder says, I want to go from 0 to 100 crores, in 3 months or 6 months or a short period, I'm like, there has to be a reality check.
But in the early stage, when there's a small team, small core team, but largely sort of heavy lifting done by the founders, you got to really back a person. Because even if the idea doesn't work out so well and the person pivots, you're backing a person, right?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Masters Union podcast. Today on the podcast, we have two very interesting guests. We have Arjun Vaidya and Trisha Rajani Vaidya. Arjun's claim to fame is his D2C startup, Dr. Vaidya's, which he started in 2016. And it's also one of the first startups to take a successful D2C exit in this space. And also joining us is Trisha Rajani, his partner in crime, both in personal and professional life. She was CEO at Dr. Vaidya's, while Arjun was the one who initially started the business. And over the course of this podcast, we're going to be touching on multiple things about their journey in general, about their personal life, their professional life, how the experience of setting up the business went about, and what are some of the things that excite them, sports, travel, music, and everything. So, Arjun, Trisha, great to have you on the podcast today with us. We'll start from the beginning. You both were working in key roles in Dr. Vaidya's. How does the dynamic work when you're working so closely together and you have a relationship outside of the office? Give us the gist of it. Where did it all begin, and at what point of time did you guys decide that, we want to get together and actually take this forward?
So I think I'll take that because I started alone and then eventually realized that I wasn't able to do it alone, right? So we started Dr. Vaidya's October 2016. I quit my job, started this brand. We started offline and failed miserably offline, actually. We put 10 lakhs of stock in the market, 2 distributors, and thought that everything was good. The finance analyst in me was modeling this out. And then 90% of this came back. And that was the biggest failure I had in my life till that moment. Little did I know how much failure I would face as an entrepreneur. But it wasn't working, right, offline. And so I remember we were dating at the time, actually. And I started reflecting on why it didn't work. And there were various reasons, right? I was too young. I didn't know offline distribution. I didn't have enough capital or brand recall to win against existing incumbents in the space. But our one conversation with Trisha, she was like, look, she was in the early team at Nykaa, and she said, at Nykaa, we saw the power of e-commerce. You saw it in your investing days. The wide space in Ayurveda is in e-commerce. Why don't you go online, right? And by this time, I was running a consumer brand, FMCG business, with manufacturing. And so there was supply chain, procurement, sales, distribution, marketing, strategy, legal, HR, IT, admin, and more. And what I did realize is that because there were so many departments in one person, I was a 5 on 10 at everything, right? And so after that conversation with her, I said, look, I think e-commerce is the opportunity, but I can't do it alone. I convinced her to join. It wasn't so difficult. We got engaged. She joined the business against the family's wishes because they were like, it's a really bad idea to plan a wedding and work together or start a company together or grow a company together. But I think the decision was probably the best decision I made while at Dr. Vaidya's, because fortunately I got someone with the same alignment of interest and also someone who had complementary skill sets, right? While I was good at the big picture, the sales, distribution, strategy, business development, production, all of that kind of stuff, she was good at the specifics, right? So ops, customer service, day-to-day performance marketing, day-to-day accounts, finance, etc. And so we split responsibilities and allocated responsibilities very well. On how it was to work together, I'll leave it to her.
Honestly, I think I wouldn't have had it any other way. I think if he was building a business and I was doing a little bit of a 9 to 5 job, it would have been very hard. I wouldn't have been able to understand the constant stress. I wouldn't have been able to understand the constant obsession. So everyone kept telling us, you need to have a work-life balance, go for date nights, take Sundays off. We took our first Sunday off, I think, in September 2020. Right, and that was also half a Sundays when we started taking. So, and I think our personalities both matched, right? If one of us was very for like, okay, no, 8 p.m, no work. Once we reach the room, no work. It wouldn't have worked. I think both of us were obsessive enough that it worked. I loved working with him, right? It just, I think we complemented each other really well. I think we understood each other. We grew. We were quite young when we started the business, so that also helped. You build something together. So we always say that's our first baby that we had together. Truthfully, you can't fight much because you can't fight at home because tomorrow, the next day, you have to go and work together. You can't fight at work because you have to go home and you're married to this person as well. And I think we divided it really well because it was very simple. Of course, we have arguments. I'll be lying. We argued all the time. But if it was my department, I had final say. If it was his department, he had final say. Or if you could convince the other one. And there was never, I mean, this may sound very cheesy, but there's never an ego, right? Because it's not about Arjun Vaidya or Trisha this time. It's about Dr. Vaidya. So I think we both had that at the back of our mind. And you have to respect the other one after a point and say that, okay, even if you made a decision that was wrong, okay, cool. I'm not going to say I told you so about it. Because then it kind of belittles the relationship also a little bit, I feel. But yeah, I don't think I would have had it any other way. Honestly, like when he decided to start working at Verlinvest and take on that role, he was very excited, etc. I was quite emotionally upset that, okay, wait, now we're not going to do something together. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm still very happy we're in a similar sector. So there's overlap at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are essentially in the same wavelength. I mean, for some, like the relationship can go a very different way when they're spending 24/7. Like when they're 24/7 with the same person, but you guys actually thrived. So in a sense, that's very beautiful. That it worked out so well for you guys. But a little bit more about the brand. It's a legacy brand. How did the setting of the D2C vertical come about? I mean, you've talked about the fact that you tried offline, it didn't essentially work out. So naturally, the next step was to take the e-commerce route. We know the timelines of it as well. You've probably given us a gist, but what were some of the challenges that you faced then in the online space?
Look, I think first, the thesis behind the brand was that ancient Ayurveda and 150 years of family legacy was not appealing accessible to you, right, Prabhu? There was no excitement or enthusiasm in relation to Ayurveda. And that's something we set out to solve, right? We said, I want to make Ayurveda cool, sexy, fun, and aspirational for Prabhu. And that thesis played out eventually online. I think the challenge initially was customers weren't willing to buy online from a brand website, right? That was not existent in 2017, 2018. And so the biggest challenge at that time was establishing the trust and credibility towards the brand, towards the story, towards what we were selling, and towards the legacy. I think what we got easily is what do we need to put out there in terms of product, packaging, conversation with customer, etc. What was more difficult was convincing a customer to come online and to buy from this brand they may not have heard of. And so, fortunately for us, we had a long legacy, right? And so we could say we're 150 years of legacy, tried and tested formulations, tried by lakhs of customers in my grandfather's clinic. That helped. But the biggest challenge initially was just getting customers over the line. And then once you get to 50 orders a day, once you have some sort of business semblance, then you have different kinds of problems. Right? And so I always say to founders, at a small, medium, and large scale, the problems you face and your core priorities change significantly, right? So initially it was getting sales, then it was fulfilling the sales and getting more customers, increasing our reach, and then it was more technical, right? It was what's our conversion rate, what's our COD return rate, why is it taking so long for an order to reach Guwahati or to Imphal? These are these black pin codes or unserviceable pin codes who are getting orders, right? So how do we solve for those? So through the journey, we faced different challenges, but initially the biggest challenge was getting customers over the line to buy online and to buy from us.
Of course, and the challenges change with time as well. Like I come from the e-commerce background as well. So when you pick up on subjects like COD return rate and Northeast orders not getting delivered, that is so relatable.
Absolutely.
As a problem. We've all been there. But interesting to know, and again, then, so as the brand evolved, what were the challenges that you faced after you had gone to say that scale of 5,000 plus orders? I mean, initially, of course, it's just getting those initial customers on board and servicing them. And of course, like you described, the challenge was two-way. Not only did you have to sell Ayurveda as a concept, and of course, to a certain extent, people do know about it, but then telling them about Ayurveda in general, and then at the same time, you had to sell Dr. Vedas as a brand as well. So it was a much larger challenge in that sense.
Yeah.
But what was the challenge when you went to say 5,000 plus orders a
Do
day?
you want to talk about
Yeah.
those were more operational challenges, right?
I think we started off in a 100 square foot warehouse, right, which was literally a pantry room that we converted to a warehouse, and we made that into 250 square foot, then 500, then pandemic hit, and you had to kind of, from a safety perspective, split things up. but we never moved beyond, I think, 750 square feet or for a warehouse. I think the challenge was to people management,
Of course.
because when you have your own website also and you're doing 5,000 orders, you also have to think of not just getting the orders to the customer, but the amount of customer feedback and calls and queries you get. How do you deal with the volumes? We were getting like couple of thousand queries a day on WhatsApps, couple of hundred emails,
Wow.
couple of thousand calls incoming. Then you have to do outgoing calls as well, right? So I think that whole managing that process, you have different languages at this point. You can't just say I'm only going to speak Hindi, English. We had Hindi, English, Marathi, Gujarati, Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, right? We had to be able to answer our consumer. You can't be a brat in a way and not be approachable as a brand and say I'm only going to be, associated with these languages, right? So that was another challenge. Honestly, another thing that I think took up a lot of time is people management. When we were younger, when we were smaller, we knew everything about everyone in our team. When you grow a little larger and we started having different departments, it was still important to us. We had 150 people at the end of it. It was still very important to Arjun and me that one of us, at least, if not both, had a connect with the human being, right? I had a connect with the person. It wasn't just a employee number, but we knew the person. So you get through a lot of problems, right? Egos come in way. How do you keep people motivated? How do you make sure people are doing their job efficiently? You don't want to be a police, but at times it's a balance, right, between making sure the work is done so that others don't suffer as well. So I think people management becomes a big challenge. Dealing with what is the best couriers to deal with. We're dealing with
Oh.
and we had so much of COD, right? So you understand the problems. Getting back tandoori chicken tikka masala instead of our product. Getting back stones in our bottle instead. Or
Gems. We got
Yes,
a
gems
nice
yes,
person
once.
even
yes.
bought gems and
We
put
got
it in it.
gems.
Like I was like, wow, like, you could have just taken my product and given it back, but they bought gems and put gems and gave it to us.
That's a nice gesture on their
Very
part.
sweet of
Very
them,
sweet.
even
Very
I
sweet of
thought
them. Of
so.
course.
But dealing with that, dealing with damaged products, lost products, I think those, and we scaled really quickly. So it's not that we had time to set up all these operations. And truthfully, another big challenge we had was COVID, right?
Of course.
COVID, the demand, we were fortunate and lucky that we had Ayurveda had such a high demand, but also you don't have the team. So it was Arjun, me, my brother-in-law, and 2 3 people who volunteered to, like, leave their families and come and fulfill orders every day, right? Because again, our customers are patients.
So you had like 1/5 the warehouse team and 3x, 4x the
The
number of
volume.
orders, right?
So I think that was a challenge. Also a great opportunity because it made us redo processes because we had to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
So I mean that's the
So
positive.
at that time, because demand had surged so much, we would have a tempo, and transport was not so easy,
Of course,
right?
supply chain had taken a
Between
big
our
hit.
factory, which was about 3.5 hours from Bombay, and our warehouse. So we'd have a tempo come every second day from the factory, just like a fully loaded tempo with goods. And there was no one to unload the tempo. You didn't get temp labor. So we'd unload the tempo ourselves. Like, I think he gained a lot of muscle by lifting from 6 kilo to 10 kilo boxes every day. And the building where our warehouse was, they, for some reason, for safety, at that time people were so paranoid about COVID, they would not even allow the tempo inside the building. So the tempo would unload at the gate of the building, and then we take trolleys, load it into the building. They won't open the grill to enter the building. So they'd have this grill with a cutout. And so we'd be pushing boxes through that cutout of that grill and then taking it up 6 floors to where the warehouse was. So, yeah, I mean,
And you still managed to do that with what, one
because there
third?
was no other option, right? Or you're not going to fulfill orders. You're
course.
not going to give customers their medicine.
That's very inspiring. But of course, I guess at some level you also think about the impact that you're creating,
Absolutely.
and the world was in a very different place at that
And the
point of time.
brand took a life of its own through that, right? We told these stories that we are open, we are going to fulfill orders, we are launching products in this time.
Wow, that's very inspiring for, I guess, everybody who's listening to the podcast. Okay, so I'm going to move to something else now. You guys have obviously exited the space. That came about in 2021.
21.
Yeah. You started in 2016. Of course, it's a very successful exit. It's been talked about enough. But there's also a conversation that's happened like, oh, probably could have done it like, I don't know, 2 years later or 3 years later, maybe grown the brand a little bit more. So what prompted that exactly? And if you don't mind sharing that as well, at what valuation did you take the exit? Because I could find like some numbers, but I thought those numbers were from 2019.
So I think, look, like for all the people who trade stocks, right? You can't ever time the market. So you can't buy at the bottom and sell at the top, right? There is no exact right time, except the right time for us. And for us, it seemed like the right time. I think an exit is a very personal conversation that founders need to have. And it just seemed like the right time for us. We had grown the brand, it was fair value, and so we took the right step. I think the numbers itself are irrelevant, right? The conversation that needs to be had is there will be more and more outcomes like this happening in India. We were the first few, but I can tell you that there were 25 or 30 more after we exited in the last 15, 17 months. And I think what we need to talk about is the founders' experience of letting go. Like letting go of something that you spend 95% of your time doing day in and day out for a 5-year period. All my waking hours, her waking hours were spent on this. And then one day saying, hey, this is not what I'm going to do. And I think a lot of founders find it very difficult to do that. For us, actually, the one thing we were sure about was we'd figure out what to do next. I think if you ask my dad, if you were to sell your business, what do you do next? He would be like, I don't know where I'd go, what I'd do. How can I not go to the office? Yeah. From that perspective, I think we were not so stressed or scared. We knew we'd figure it out. And we're having this conversation today. But I think that part of letting go is very difficult. And I think my dad said a really good thing to us as we were exiting. He said two things. He said, one, the future of Dr. Vaidya's now, good or bad, is not in your hands. You sowed a seed. Now, whether it becomes a plant, a tree, or the largest tree in India, it's not for you anymore. Just remember that you are the one who sowed the seed and enjoy that memory or experience. And the second thing he said is you are getting, before the age of 30, an opportunity to stop, reflect, and plan forward. I've never had that in my life. So cherish the experience you're getting right now, because nobody, or very few people in their lifetimes, regardless of the age, get this opportunity. And that's what we thought about.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. Did it also help that it was one of your existing investors only that wanted to get involved? I mean, obviously there's a relationship that's been built over a period of time, so you trust them, and it was them only who wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, look, it's our family name, right? So whether or not we own equity in the company or run the business, the name is still on the door, right? And the name will remain on the door.
Yes.
So I think it had to be given to someone who we trusted. And so, yeah, it was good that we had a relationship for sure.
Perfect. So, Arjun, you're associate with the Verlinvest now, and you're trying to grow their strategy arm in India. Just how did that come about after you had left? After the exit, what was the window in between? I'm assuming it obviously required a lot.
It wasn't so long.
Oh, it wasn't that long.
No. So I think April 1st was our first day officially completely outside Dr. Vaidya's 21. And then I think both of us said, look, we've had this experience, we've built this brand, we have all this knowledge. We need to now find a way to give back. And so we pledged that in the next year, we would enable another 1,000 D2C brands. Right? Now, how do we get there is what we were trying to figure out. So whether it was mentoring pro bono, advising, helping, angel investing, now more than 70 companies, teaching a course, which we've also taught to your students now at Masters Union as well, teaching our playbook. All of these things were what was engaging us and what we became passionate about, right? And through that time, I got introduced to the folks at Verlinvest. Totally random interaction, never spoken before, obviously heard of them. And they're very successful fund, blue chip investors in the consumer space. And have been investing in India for more than 10 years now. Investors in Sula, Viba, Epigamia, Purple, Wakefit, Byju's, Heads Up for Tails. And so, given that it's a sort of single LP evergreen fund structure based out of Belgium, the strategy became more growth, early growth to private equity. And so it was $15 to $100 million type investments. And they wanted to get into more early stage investing. And so they came up with the idea to create a venture strategy led by ex-founders across 3 geographies, India, US and Europe. Just specifically looking for a founder who's built and sold a consumer brand below the age of 40, who's passionate about the ecosystem. And so it actually worked out given what I was passionate about, what Verlinvest was looking for. And I just loved the idea of creating a fund that's global and run by ex-founders, because I think we need many more founders in the investing ecosystem, because we've seen the journey operating, right? And so sometimes we see or empathize or have been in certain situations which maybe just a professional investor may not have been. And so the idea was just super cool to me, really exciting. So I got to know them over 2-3 months, really loved what they stood for. It aligned with what I stood for. That eventually led to me setting up and leading their venture business in India now.
I love this idea with even with Dr. Vaidya's, how the two of you coming together, it just fit in so well organically. And over here with Verlinvest as well, with your expectations and what their expectations are, it just aligns so
very
perfectly.
lucky and fortunate and thankful to be able to get this kind of opportunity.
Of course, of course. So Trisha, this one goes for you. You two are working with Rukam Capital as a consultant now. Just tell us, how did that come about for you, and what was the window in between for you exactly?
So honestly, like I think we did it initially together, right? Where we would advise companies, consult companies, mentor, invest together. Arjun then obviously started speaking to Verlinvest, and it was a 2-3 month window. I started taking on, unlike him, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I was very drawn by the Tharasya model in India. I like the consulting space as well. I wanted to learn about social commerce. So I actually started spending a day advising different businesses. So I was working with Global Bees, helping them with acquisitions, helping Rukam with their consumer fund, helping Trell with their social commerce platform as well. So I wanted to see what was out there, what are the different models. And that's what I did, right? I think now after doing that for about a year or so, and I still continue in consulting larger companies, I think the itch has finally come that, let's do something of my own again. Because while this is great in terms of it gave me 1 year to see what are the opportunities, what are the spaces that are extremely crowded as well, what are the challenges people are facing. It's also given me a good overview, I think, of the space and landscape, right? From just an Ayurveda landscape to a little bit more for a wider macro landscape. So I think now the itch is there that, okay, it's time to start something on my own. So I'm hoping now that will be the next phase.
So just on your own, or could we see like the pair
Who
come
knows?
together?
Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, he'll obviously always be there. There's no, I don't think it's a choice in that matter. But obviously, he's also with Verlinvest right now, right? So that's also another commitment. But yeah, who knows what the future will hold.
We're very interested. We're looking forward to what you have in mind. Again, I'm just sort of going to the same thing. You've been mentoring and investing in a lot of startups, both of you, in fact. So just want to understand, what is your investment philosophy, and like what are some of the industries you're actively engaged in, or are looking to engage in actually?
So I think for us, I'll talk first about the fund. So in Verlinvest, from the venture fund, we invest in consumer, but wide in consumer, right? So consumer brands, technology, platforms, and enablers. We've done already 2 investments, one in a vernacular podcasting or regional language podcasting platform called Cuckoo FM. Now the largest in India, more than 1 million paid subscribers. And we've also recently announced an investment in a consumer health platform called Eka Care, solving for the full stack of consumer health, building on the government health stack, and sort of simplifying health, patient health records, insurance, and the likes for Indians. I would say, philosophy-wise, we both, and Trisha can add, look at 3 things. Because we invest in the early stage, founder, who the person is, why they have the right to win, and how much grit they'll fight failure with. That's 50%. 20% is addressable market size. Is it a large enough market? I'm sugar-free and gluten-free, but I don't invest in sugar-free, gluten-free products because there's very few number of consumers in India, right? And then the last one is the basic, right? The business metrics, the economics, sales, growth velocity, gross margin, bottom line, team, infrastructure, plan, retention, those kind of things. So it would be 50% on founder, 20% on market size, and 30% on business metrics, unit economics. I don't know what you have to.
What about
No,
you?
I think that's fair. I think, the more we invest, the more we speak to founders, more time comes, we've also learned, right, about investing. I think another thing is that one thing we've learned is no shortcuts, right? When a founder says, I want to go from 0 to 100 crores, in 3 months or 6 months or a short period, I'm like, there has to be a reality check. So I think that's another big thing, right? Is there a reality check with the person? Are they actually aware of what's happening? Have they spent that time and effort to research this space? Do they care about the product, right? To just launch a brand, but the product quality not being up to the mark, according to me, that can never be a business. So I think, where we've seen people spend time understanding the space, understanding the gaps, the niche, spend time on developing the product, taking feedback on the product if it's still a pre-revenue, pre-launch stage, that shows you a lot about a founder as well. We do a typically early stage, right? So when we do early stage, you are betting mainly on the founder to
Yeah.
drive the business. We also like doing spaces where we can add value, right? We've also done a little bit of diversity because generally, like as an investor, you want to have a little bit of a
Sure.
wider portfolio. And in those cases, if I like the business and I don't necessarily am an expert, I'll always loop in an expert maybe to get it. But we've done about 70 deals, as Arjun said, across consumer tech, enablers, agri, fintech, edtech, EV, quite a variety to be very honest. And I think the ecosystem is really nice that you can leverage each other's experts.
So very interesting. You placed almost 50% importance on the founder.
Yeah.
Just want to understand, is that more because you're investing in early stage startups, or in general, like, do you agree with the idea that a founder is 50% critical to the success of the business?
It depends on the scale of
Hmm.
the business, to be honest. So at the early stage, it's a very founder-driven conversation. If you're investing in a Series B, Series D startup, Series B, C, or D, then there is an org built around the founder, right?
Of
And so
course.
the dependence on the founder will reduce from 50%. There will be dependence on the founder, but reduce from 50%. But in the early stage, when there's a small team, small core team, but largely sort of heavy lifting done by the founders, you got to really back a person. Because even if the idea doesn't work out so well and the person pivots, you're backing a person, right?
So
The
you're more of
person
a
is the
founder
stock.
person,
The
founder
person
over
is the
idea,
stock.
basically.
Yeah.
That's
Look,
nice.
the idea has to be good.
Of course. So, how do you guys see the D2C industry shaping up right now? And are you noticing any interesting trends? You can talk about the good and the bad that are emerging in this space. Something you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, look, I think I'll share a realistic picture, right? Uh, I am obviously very biased. I'm from this ecosystem. And so I will say this is the decade of D2C, right? It's a decade of new age brands. Consumers in India are more discerning. Consumers are trading up. We have the largest middle class and one of the youngest and largest middle class in the world. And so the opportunity to build has never been better, right? COVID has changed behavior significantly. My mom and dad are placing orders online, which they had never done before. And so the opportunity is there. But with any opportunity comes challenges. And I think the challenges today in the D2C space, at least, are the amount of competition, right? In certain spaces, competition is too heated. With competition comes increased ad costs, increased customer acquisition costs. I think that's something for all of us to keep in mind. As competition has increased, demand for ads has increased, supply still remains the same. Facebook is still Facebook. There's only so much real estate available. Same with Google. And so you have to be much smarter about your technicals and understanding the boring stuff, the numbers, when you're building a brand. I think the other thing that we are seeing today is that, let's say, for example, out of 100 rupees of consumption, 10 rupees was consumed online, 90 rupees was consumed offline. Then the craziest lockdown hit, it went to 100 rupees consumed online, 0 rupees consumed offline. Eventually, the world is settling as things are opening offline. And so we'll not go back to 10 rupees, but we'll go back to 20, 30, or 40. But we'll never go back to 100 either, right? Because there will be fundamental amount of offline consumption. And so brands that have reset themselves at the 100 will face some challenge because we will go back to more offline consumption. And also, I think at some point after a certain scale, D2C brands will have to start thinking of an omni-channel strategy. There will have to be like a Lenskart or a Sugar or
Yeah.
a Nykaa. There'll have to be an offline presence.
Agree.
And I think the right balance of that is great. But the great part about online is at least setting up a base you can do online. I struggled setting up a base offline, right? Because there were certain challenges, money, competition, etc., all of that. But today, when Dr. Vedis is known by 2 million plus families in India or 2 million plus customers in India, going offline may be easier. And so that online base and then creation of omni-channel experience could be a beautiful balance that we'll see come out in India more.
Fair enough.
I think just to add in terms of trends, right? I see the power of content, right? The amount people are consuming of content. Also, surprising to see also the short span of attention someone has. How do you get a message or a content piece across now in 7 seconds, 10 seconds, right? That's a new art according to me, right? It's very difficult to do. So I think content consumption. I think people are caring a lot more about why should I buy this brand. People are questioning things a lot more. I feel it's a brand's responsibility now to make sure that they can educate the consumer, right? Not only about the ingredients, how to use all of that, sure, but why should you buy X brand over Y, right? What does my brand stand for? How can I get someone to aspire to be a consumer of my brand? I think that's another thing. I think WhatsApp we have seen really, really explode in India. Like a lot of our business was on WhatsApp as well. So how do you use that channel correctly? It gets misused also, I'll be honest, but to be quite cognizant about it and use it in the right way, super important. You'll realize the whole customer experience, right? People are spoiled with this whole Instamart, Swiggy, Zepto, or 5 minutes, 10 minutes, quick commerce that's coming out. People are getting spoiled because they have the option available. So how do you bridge that gap and be realistic without losing money on every order as well to make sure that the customer doesn't cancel the order, but giving them that right customer experience, right? Like when you have a personalized customer experience for yourself, right? I've bought X product. How do I upsell you the Y or Z that's the most relevant to you? I think that's becoming much more important than just saying, hey, you bought from me. Now these are 30 other products I have to offer you, right?
Contextualized retention.
I think contextualized retention that's perfectly put. That's definitely something that needs to be worked on.
No, interesting. So I think you'd be a better person for this.
You can see she talked about the specifics, I talked about the general, right?
No, but because we mentioned this, before as well in the podcast. So, and this is my take that the D2C industry has always been heavily dependent on advertising. Like the growth has simply happened on the base of advertising, and advertising is sort of going through its own crisis as well with what's been happening with Facebook, Google, the iOS 14 changes, and everything in general. The customer acquisition costs, like you said, they're rising like they're going very, very high. As a brand, how do you plan around those challenges? And do you believe that's why storytelling has become so critical now for brands? Because if you're not investing in that particular art, if you're not investing in content right now, you're just going to get left behind.
So I'll be very honest. When we started, we didn't spend any money on brand building, right? And that was a mistake I think we made, right? Because your focus is, you're so young, you're so new as a business, you care about the revenue. You care that am I getting the sales? And I think a lot of brands face that. I think a mistake I made and I wouldn't do it again is probably spend all my money on just performance marketing. I would spend on brand building content. I think that telling the story, building the brand, tapping into your existing customer base is extremely critical. But I don't think you can shy away from the advertisement part. I'll be very honest. I think more and more now you see organic search going down. You go and search for anything on Google now. You will not only have the brand marketplaces. What number does the organic ranking come on? Right? And it's going to get more and more. Even if you look at Instagram, the simple algorithm, brands that were doing extremely well without promoting their posts, look at their engagement. And if you start promoting posts, even if it's 50 rupees, 100 rupees, overall your organic increases. Right? So I don't think we can run away from that. I think you have to try and figure out other ways. You have Facebook, Google. Can you fully be dependent on that? I don't think so anymore. So what are other ways in which you can leverage it? Can you leverage influencers? For example, when TikTok came, we were one of the first brands to advertise on TikTok. And we had tried on other platforms and not been so successful. But TikTok for us clicked. Right? So how do you actually look at these new opportunities? How do you leverage Quora as a content platform better?
Yes, absolutely.
It's just completely missed out. And actually, if you speak to anyone at Quora also, they'll tell you that the actual Hindi Quora, the consumption level there, the amount of time people spend on data is extremely high. Right? So I think you have to keep finding new avenues for advertising as well.
Agreed on that. So what's the one piece of advice that you would like to give to every entrepreneur out there who's listening to this podcast? On the basis of everything that you've been through over these last 6-7 years with your journey at Dr. Vaidya's, and then what you've been doing since then in terms of the investing and the mentoring.
I'll give 2 and then I know Arjun will give 3.
So I'm going to change it up now that you said that.
Okay, good. I think the one thing is that it's a damn tough journey, right? You have more bad days than even average days or good days. Your good days are minimal,
Yeah.
right? The good days help you remember why you're doing what you're doing, but it is a tough journey. So, for that reason, you need an extremely solid support system around you. We were fortunate to have each other. We were fortunate to have our families who are nothing but supportive, right? Like in COVID time, they could have also put their foot down and, thought about themselves. But no, they would sit with us and label bags every day, right? They were fortunate to understand that, we are choosing not to have any social life and for 3-4 years, don't trouble us, right? We were fortunate. Um, that's one. And then just I'll extend to that a little is having a right team. You cannot do it alone, right? Arjun and I could not have done it alone. We hired senior people later on because again, seeing those salaries, how will I afford it? How will I pay? You don't realize now. Second time round, I would hire experts, hire people who could take that burden or weight off you a little bit. I would hire. So I think that's something I would say that have a very strong support system, both personally and professionally, is key.
Yeah, I think maybe adding to that, right? When I speak to a lot of young folks, I think I hear two things, which um, I think is not the best way to start up. The first is I'm excited to start up, but I'm doing my job, and then when my startup becomes big, I'll quit my job. You can't be slightly pregnant with entrepreneurship. I've said this many times. You're either in or you're out. If you want to build something of scale, you have to be 100% in. The second thing is, because we are all so well educated, because we read so much, there's so much knowledge out there, etc. Sometimes we over philosophize, we overthink things. The best way to start is to start. Because until you start, you don't know anything, right? So you over philosophize for 3 months about building the perfect product, and then you give it to the customer that actually we don't want this, right? But what if you just 80 days earlier gave it to the customer and then they came to you and said, actually, this is what we want. And then you can tweak and then get out the right version of the product, right? So I think I would say you're either in or you're out. The best way to start is to start. And there's no better time to start than now. The startup ecosystem has never been so vibrant. I can tell you, I was in the gym like a couple months ago, 3-4 months ago, and my trainer's talking to me about the Paytm IPO and what I think will happen in the Paytm IPO and what the business model of Paytm is, right? So startups are mainstream and it's part of our culture, it's part of our life now. And this wasn't the case 5 years ago. So the best time for startups in India is coming. It's not come yet.
And there's one more thing, sorry, I will add. There are no shortcuts. People ask us, oh, I want to grow this business. I want to scale
What's the
it.
hack?
Yeah.
There's no hack.
Oh, everyone.
If there's a hack,
everybody's a growth hacker on LinkedIn.
I would not be sitting on this couch if there was a hack. I'd be building $100 million businesses.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there are no shortcuts.
So before I go to the next question, I have to ask you, when the trainers asked you about the Paytm IPO, what was your actual opinion?
I said I don't know enough. I don't
That's
give
a very
stock.
safe answer
I
for the
said I don't give
podcast.
stock advice, but I didn't invest.
You didn't invest.
I
Okay.
didn't invest.
That's interesting. So, a lot of businesses out there try and do some interesting things. What are your top 3 startups and why?
Top 3 startups.
Yeah. Or you
Let's
could just
say
talk
top
about the
3
D2C.
spaces.
Yeah. Top 3 spaces also works. Yeah.
Spaces we're excited
Okay,
about.
we'll say one
D2C.
each because otherwise it'll be hard for the second person who goes. I personally think maybe because I've also just done up a house, so I'm a little biased towards this. But I think the whole home furnishing space, right? I think you have younger people setting up houses of their own, more disposable income. Everyone cares when they invite someone home, right? To what painting is on the wall, what carpet is there, what crockery you serve it in. And I think we always had just few brands, less design, or very expensive brands, which you can't afford it, to be honest, when you're just starting out your first home. So I think the home furnishing space is definitely something that I see growing now even more.
Yeah, I think just adding to that, even kitchen, home plus kitchen.
Home
I think
plus living. in general.
big white space. I think pets is a big white space as well. We've had record pet adoption through COVID, and I think it's a space that needs more brands. It's a nascent space in India, but it has huge potential. At Verlinvest, we are investors in Heads Up for Tails, and I think that lots more brands will be created. Heads Up for Tails has done an amazing job in seeding this space, but I think lots more will be created for pet lovers. And I think the last one I would like to talk about is sport and fitness.
Yeah.
Again, we're nascent on that. Maybe I'm biased because I'm really into it. But I think lots more will be built in our country in relation to this across income strata and across sort of levels of performance. But lots will be built.
Oh, that's great. So now we'll move on to the fun stuff.
Okay.
We've had the audience has gotten to know you guys as entrepreneurs and in terms of your professional journey. So I want to know you better as a person.
Sure.
So okay, we'll start with you. So I want to give you a hypothetical. You were very close to giving the GMAT, or you did give the GMAT.
I gave the GMAT. I got 730.
730.
Good scores to say it out loud.
Yeah. 720, but now I'm feeling more conscious. That's okay. But okay, so just this thing. So what if you had actually pursued that? Where would you be right now instead of this room? Or maybe still in this room, had you pursued that path?
I would still be back in India for sure. So I would have gone to the US or the UK, done my MBA and come back. What I would have been doing, hopefully I would have started up by then. Yeah. So it would have been 2018, 2019. So hopefully I would have started up by then. And be running my startup.
Oh, still, Dr. Vaidyas, do you think you would have been drawn back? You would have just been drawn to the idea of coming?
No idea. The experiences in college would determine it, right?
Yeah. And for you, in general, like if this opportunity hadn't come your way and he hadn't started up and you hadn't gotten involved, where would you be right now?
Honestly, I hate exams, so I would not have done the GMAT or tried to go for an MBA. I have a proper exam phobia. I always wanted to start my own thing, but I'll be frank, I didn't have the risk appetite to start it. Right? So even when Arjun and I were dating, we used to keep discussing ideas. Every day we probably had 3 or 4 new ideas, and we had this little book and used to write them all down in. But I never had that. I think you do need a risk appetite to be able to take that plunge and say, I'm going to start. So I can't lie and say I would have started my own thing if it wasn't for Arjun. But I would have wished that I was definitely part of, maybe not started my own, but definitely part of a founding team of something, because that's something I truly do enjoy, is building something, building a brand, building a business. So maybe not started my own, but join a founding team of another startup.
Okay. What's your idea of fun? Like outside of work, do you guys get to travel a lot?
Yeah, travel is fun. I think for me, fitness, sports, that's fun. Playing, watching. I really enjoy that. I like writing.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, you guys should follow me on LinkedIn and see what I write. I like writing as well, and I'm a documentary buff. I can't read so much actually. I have a concentration problem, so I learn through documentary. So that's fun for me.
What kind of documentaries?
Mostly sports, history, politics, or biographies. That's what I like watching.
We have watched every single sports documentary
Every single
that's
one.
there on OTT.
Yeah, whatever
I
is
guarantee
available.
you.
Your favorite
would
one?
have seen
I
it.
have to ask.
Last Dance
Hmm.
in sports,
Oh, of course.
and I think in Indian, the latest Voot one on the India-Australia series, Bando Mein Tha Dam, that was a really good one. Yeah, so in sports documentaries.
That was very well captured. The whole emotion was very well
Yeah.
captured. And I know you are just outside of this thing. I also see that you're wearing that that band, and you've talked about it, that you're very patriotic. Where does that come from exactly?
Again, it's not something specific. It doesn't come from. There's no specific reason. I think maybe because I'm such a sports fan, I'm also very patriotic. But it's a part of me. It's part of who I am. I've been wearing this band for the last 13, 14 years. I wear it every single day. You'll see me with this band on every single day. And if you buy Dr. Vaidya's products, you'll see Proudly Indian written on the front and center. That's a little bit of me that will remain in the brand forever.
That's very nice. That's very nice. So outside of this thing, outside of sports, like what kind of music do you guys enjoy? Do you guys actually enjoy music? I have to ask.
I don't think we have a particular genre. We listen
Top
to
50.
top 50.
Oh, the Spotify.
uh,
that makes it easy.
Spotify. Yeah, Kaigo, Ed Sheeran. We go
Yeah,
to
we're not
those.
music people.
Just go with the flow.
Whatever's
guys.
trending, we'll listen to it.
Yeah.
But do you guys actually get time to watch stuff? Like I'm assuming with your busy schedules, like do you get time to Netflix?
I have, after we sold Dr. Vaidya's, I have a much better discipline about work-life balance than Arjun does. And now I force it a little because we don't spend all our days together, right? He's in office, I'm in a separate office. So I am quite good about 8 p.m. is shut off from work. And I try Saturday, Sundays also not to be doing. I mean, it doesn't always happen, but I try.
We're here on Saturday.
And Sunday. But as I said, I try.
Most days.
Most times. I'm actually good at it. I think I've become better at it. Arjun, you have to still pull him away from it, is the
Yeah.
truth. But now
Stuff.
I can fight for it a little bit more, I think.
But what's your idea of fun in general? Like, what does an ideal weekend look like for you?
Honestly, like normal working days, I think till 8 p.m. That's normal. Weekends, honestly, just meeting people, meeting the family. I love going for movies, but he doesn't, so I always have to find someone else to go for movies with. I love traveling. To be honest, for me, that is something, and I think that's also in a way our next passion project when we have time is to try and figure out how to improve tourism in India. There's such beautiful places. People go
I
to
agree.
Switzerland, and we went to Kanatal in Uttarakhand, and we're like, who needs to go to Switzerland? Like, when you have this, we had gone to Sikkim as well in lockdown, and we were like, no one talks about it. And I think 2-3 Insta stories we posted, and the number of people who asked, where is this, can give us details, and went to Sikkim after that. So I think there's a lot that can be done. And hopefully one day, next whenever we have time, that'll be our next passion project.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about tourism in India.
Okay.
It's something we need to improve. Yeah, if we can help in any way, we would.
No, beyond this, how do you feel about just the idea of travel? Like,
Love
do you
it.
enjoy it?
Yeah, yeah,
just much?
absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. It's a way to disconnect, right?
It's been great having you guys on the podcast. I'm sure our audience has gotten to know you so much better, both as in terms of your personal life, but outside of what you do in terms of your professional endeavors and everything. And I'm sure they'll have a lot of learnings to take away from this experience. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
for
for
having
having
us. It's been a pleasure.